Good morning. Well, it's good to be back. On Friday, I almost called Pastor Ken and said, I have no idea where to begin or what to say. Maybe I should just cancel. It's been a unique year, and we don't really need to talk about that. January 1st 2020 started off really good. I went to Montana with a group of shooters and in a competition, and I won. And then it's been downhill ever since. So, in 2014, Canadian Sunday School Mission changed their name to One Hope Canada. And the reason for that is we're about a 95-year-old ministry, and we never really did Sunday school. The mission started off to do Sunday school in Western Canada, but they never did Sunday school. Right up until 2014, the national office in Winnipeg would get calls every week saying, hey, we need a Sunday school teacher this week. Could you guys provide us a Sunday school teacher? That's what they thought. They didn't know we were about camp ministry. So we looked at doing a name change. We changed our name to One Hope Canada. And what's the one hope that we can give children and youth today in Canada? It's Jesus Christ. And so today, in my role as the provincial director, field director in Saskatchewan, I have 9 camps under what I look after. And then as the operational director for all of Canada, for the other regions, it's hard not to be controversial. It's hard not to criticize the government, but I'll try not to go there today. I do understand the frustrations. There is a division in not just like in all churches across Saskatchewan. As I travel a lot, what I see going on here is exceeding, and I'm a guy that has to spend hours and hours in these regulations, and it's causing division in churches. It's causing divisions at our camps. It's causing divisions in ministry. And I have no simple answer in the fact to say that the cream will rise to the top and the church will become stronger. And where is the church strongest today in the world? It's the persecuted church. And so I do believe that we're under a bit of a persecution. And so I do spend a lot of time with government. And I've always said this story before. In 20 years of camp ministry, and that was including all my years volunteering at Chronicles Chapter Bible Camp, and then 9 years full-time with the ministry, I've never led a child to Christ. And people look at me, what? How can you be in children's ministry? You've never led a child to Christ. My role is to strengthen and work with our missionaries and build into their lives, who build into their teams, who lead children to Christ, and to build into our boards to build strong camps. And so that's what I want to talk about today and give an update. At the beginning of 2020, of this year in January, another organization, a local organization, it was not a ministry, they approached me and then said, hey, you know what, you should really apply for this opening we have. We think you'd be a good candidate. And it took me by surprise, and of course you're flattered, but I had no interest. And not to be arrogant, like Bonnie and Kelsey say, you need to pray about everything. You know, they always say, pray about everything. I didn't even pray about it because I wasn't interested. I didn't feel that my time was up with One Hope Canada. I didn't feel that it was time to leave. The national board and my national director wasn't telling me it's time to leave, and I felt there was a lot of work to do. By mid-March, I was thinking, maybe I should have prayed about it and looked at it more seriously. Wouldn't have had to raise my own support. I'd be home every night. I'd be home on the weekends, and Then I remember in February, I was in Winnipeg for the national board meetings, and I said to the national board, I said, there's something out there in the world, and I was watching what's going on in China, I was watching what's going on in Italy, and in the States, this is called the epidemic. I think that's the word. This could go to pandemic. If this goes to pandemic and comes to Canada, we won't be running camp this summer. And they looked at me like I was totally crazy and smoking drugs. And we're recording this, right? But anyways, they said, what are you talking about? And I said, this has the potential to shut us down. And it wasn't 3 weeks later that we were shut down. And then the stress kind of began. It's just like 9 camps and 42 missionaries in the province and 88 board members are looking at you thinking, okay, Terry, what are we going to do this summer? I have no idea. The message we want to give out to our churches and to the general public is that we're not closed. Camp is not closed. We don't know what our plan is for 2020, summer 2020, but we're not closed. We're not going away. We're not shutting down. We're still going to be doing some type of ministry. We don't know what that will look like. Whatever stage of life that you're in right now, and especially for those who are under the age of 40, whatever God has you doing right now, take to heart and pay attention, because God will use that in future years. And this isn't about me, and this is not trying to be proud or arrogant, but I remember when I first came on to finance facilities of this church and I became the finance director, month to month there was less than $300 in our checking account of this church. We've come a long way since then. And we changed our strategy, how we do finances in the church. And Jan and Pat used to call me Tightwad Terry because I'm really cheap with ministry money. And then I saved over our committee saved over 30-some thousand, and I stepped down and Lee took over and he spent it all. But we have nice ceilings here and in the fellowship hall. Remember those days, Lee? I couldn't believe you spent all the money I worked so hard to save. Then I was on the board at Canoe Lake Bible Camp with Jim, and the camp was broke, and we were into our line of credit for $7,500. We maxed it out because people like Jenna were out of control, and as a teenager, and spent it. And so the camp was always broke, and I said, why are we maxed out at our line of credit, $7,500? Well, that's the way we always operate. And then I became the board chairman. I said, we're going to change that. We're not going to operate that way anymore. And if you remember those meetings, Jim, it's January, and the Carlisle Bakery has now sent us their bill for the previous summer's buns. We couldn't afford to pay it. SAS Power would send you those stupid little cards in the mail where you had to walk out to the meter and draw the little arrows. Do you remember those? I shared that the other day with a group of young people. They had no idea what I was talking about. And I remember Jim and I, we looked out the window of the lodge and said, well, there's 4 feet of snow from here to the pole. SAS Power can wait for the money. We got to pay the local baker so we can get buns next year. And then Bonnie was doing registrations, and we had to wait for a few registrations to come in so we can pay the bakery. And then we had to wait for our April banquet so that we could pay SAS Power. God used those experiences in my life so that when March came along, we went to all our camps in Saskatchewan and said, you will prepare 3 budgets. This is not an option, this is not a suggestion. You will prepare 3 budgets and you'll submit them to me, and we're going to go through and we're going to reorganize how we're going to do our fiscal year from March to September 30th, because this is serious. We can't do fundraising banquets. We have no kids to register, and our camps are big. And donor support was dropping off because people didn't know if they're going to have a job or what was going on. And you could talk to Brendan about that, because he was working with Brad and they had to submit me 3 budgets, and there was one I said, no, you can do better on this one, tighten it up and redo it. And I'll talk more about it a bit later. So we ended our fiscal year September 30th, and all of our 9 camps have been totally blessed by God, and none of them finished in the black. So, no, didn't finish in the red. Positive, they finished positive. And it wasn't because of me, but it's just like those experiences of being involved in those times. It's like, okay, God, what are we going to do? You haven't seen us a lot since church opened up, because I do travel a lot. And we keep our circles very, very tight and very, very small. Because, like I've shared with some of you, I don't want to be the guy that comes into the church and brings it, and I don't want to be the guy who takes it from our community into another community, and that of transmission. But so we're slowing down a little bit. We have a few more commitments over the next couple of weeks, and then I haven't been on the road for 2 weeks, but then things are slowing down, so you'll see more of us. Usually we run 6,500 kids in camp ministry in Saskatchewan. This year through, whether it was virtual, day camps, some type of VBS sort of, and not to take away from other ministries, we were able to minister to 1,500 kids in Saskatchewan. Which our prayer was that we would minister to the kids that needed to hear the gospel, the right kids. And we feel that God totally blessed the ministry this summer. Some of our camps chose to do maintenance and get their camps beautified and get long overdue programs or facilities upgraded to where they needed to be. And others did like virtual, like camp in a box, camp in a bag, where they actually had packed stuff and had it sent out to kids, and kids interacted with that. And it actually went over quite well. Those camps that run day camps, parents couldn't, because there's no school since March, parents couldn't wait to throw their kids off. I thought, wow, if they ever open up camp, we're going to be full. And Estevan Bible Camp, they ran day camp. They ran the exact same camp as they would have ran, except they didn't do overnight. Their numbers exceeded that the most numbers they ever had, and they had the most salvations they ever had. in this church, we talk about Kenosha Lake Bible Camp a lot because it's where we were founded, but I can't show favoritisms, but I do. But Estevan Bible Camp is a thriving little camp, and it's only 50 minutes from here. If you ever want to get involved with something exciting, we have 6 young board members, about age 33 to 25, going to like 4 different churches in the community with young families, just totally on fire, serving that camp on that board. Just an exciting place to be. And if you know Layden and Natisse McKenzie, just on fire for the Lord and just run a solid ministry. And their teaching is awesome. So great things happening there. July 1st, Bonnie and I, we weren't on the road for 3 months. We couldn't go anywhere for 3 months when there was no COVID in Saskatchewan. Now there's COVID everywhere and we can go wherever. Just, things don't make sense. I try not to be negative. But July 1st weekend, we went on the road. We started going to our camps, and it was very sad to go to your camps and see them empty. And it was tough to see the canoes and the docks just still on the beach, and the boats weren't in the water, and cabins were empty. It was hard. But there's a lot of blessing came out of it. Stony Lake Bible Camp is up by Melfort, and there's one little boy. He's 6 years old, and he has, I don't fully understand it, he has a very rare disease he's been diagnosed, which is equivalent to Alzheimer's for children. And he's 6 years old, and he's hit the peak, and so they don't know if he'll make the next year. The Make-A-Wish Foundation came to his family, and that's a huge organization. You can have any wish you want. What would you like? And you're thinking Disney World, Disneyland, and wherever. And this boy said, I want to go to Stony Lake Bible Camp. And the Make-A-Wish Foundation, they bought a camper because he couldn't stay in the cabin. They bought the family a camper. Dad had a truck. And because there was no camp, they said they put on a full camp for this little boy and his family. And it's 1 mile in, like off the main grid, it's 1 mile lane. And they put up signs, not just cardboard signs, but they did really fancy signs for this kid to come. And as they drove in to see all these signs, just kind of building the excitement. They brought an actual chapel speaker in specifically for him. They ran tuck, they did skills all day. They did 2 chapel times. They give this child, the 6-year-old boy and his family who have walked away from the church, they give him full camp with a gospel presentation. And then when this boy gets really excited, he slept for 3 days after camp. And his parents are back in the local church, and they're being ministered to because of that 1 day at camp. That was the only ministry that Stony did this year. I have seasonal allergies because it hasn't rained for 3.5 months. So if I walk across the grass, the dust just, and so people look at me in the grocery store like, oh, so don't sneeze. Madge Lake Bible Camp ran day camps, and they played both sides of the border because we couldn't open up until in around June, second week of June. The government said we can run day camps. Madge Lake's right on the border up at Duck Mountain Provincial Park. They ran in Manitoba, and then they crossed back into Saskatchewan in July. There was 2 girls came and heard the gospel about Jesus every day, and then mom's into witchcraft. And these girls would come home every night and talk about Jesus, and the mom kept inquiring, what is this Jesus? It's contrary to what she was into, witchcraft. And the girls made a decision for Christ, and the local director in the local church is now working with mom, who is walking away from witchcraft and is turning her life over to the Lord because of what camps did. And that's why I said, we're going to do some type of ministry. We don't know what it will be. Kenosha Lake Bible Camp, of course, we're very familiar with it. This was supposed to be the 60th anniversary of KLBC, a big celebration. On the August long weekend, there was supposed to be over 300 people there. You know how we normally pack it out. Brad's theme, and he'll share this with you sometime, his theme was rejoice, and they had shirts made up that said rejoice on it. And he said, there was many a days that I worked by myself at the camp, lonely, empty, in tears, thinking we're supposed to be full, we're supposed to be celebrating, and 60 years of ministry, and this isn't the way it's supposed to be. And then he would look down at his shirt and it says rejoice. And he says, and now somehow I'm supposed to rejoice. And thank God. And he was being challenged in his own way. And then we talked about how Paul and Silas are put in jail and they had to rejoice and share the ministry in chains, right? And so we can share ministry through this pandemic. There's a battle going on for the souls of our teens and our youth right now more than ever. In my lifetime, there's more competition that Satan's putting right now. It's a battle that I can't help but think sometimes we're losing, but we know the end of the story, right? We know that we're going to win the war, but there's going to be casualties along the way. Porn is a huge problem with our young teen boys, and it's going down as age 11, 9, and 10-year-old boys. When I was policing and I did fraud investigations, we did a lot of credit card fraud, because back in the day, the only way they were able to get porn was to go on some type of channel on the TV and subscribe to it, and they'd steal someone else's credit card, right? So we do this full investigation. Now boys can access porn readily available on any smartphone, right? For free. Porn is a major addiction. Witchcraft. Up north, we don't hear a whole lot about the suicides anymore. It doesn't mean they're not happening. The media just got tired reporting on them. Last year in 2019, I said we had 6,500 kids roughly at our camps. 4 kids are no longer with us. Couldn't have been at summer this year because of suicide. A lot of it goes back to witchcraft. It's just taking like youth and that intrigue of what it's all about. And then Instagram. Instagram is destroying female culture like crazy. The Saskatoon Children's Hospital is full of 14, 13, 15-year-old girls, and the psychs ward part of that hospital is full of young girls who are trying to live up to this fake world of Instagram, this perfect body that does not exist, this perfect culture that does not exist. And our girls are so sucked into this culture, and it's destroying them. They're just like anorexia, bulimic, whatever you call that. It's just, and so I share that to give you a glimpse of what's going on in our province. We live in a very blessed area of the province down here in southeast Saskatchewan, so we don't do a lot of this at Kenosha Bible Camp, but I got 7 other camps that deal with this quite rarely. We're very blessed in the fact that, we have good agriculture down here, we have good oil business. Ministries will also tell you this is one of the hardest areas of the province to do ministry in as well. And we don't have a whole lot of COVID down here. But we have a lot of these, as you travel out, we're very blessed in this area of the province. As we travel out to the rest of the province, the battle is huge. So why do we do this? As I said earlier, I didn't feel called to leave. I felt there's a lot of work to do. And I still feel camp ministry is still the number one way to reach children and youth for the gospel and to build into their lives and to help them and to follow up on them of what they're dealing with in life and to connect them to the local church or to our local youth pastor. I still feel camp is the number one catalyst. If it wasn't, I wouldn't be involved in it. And so there's a lot of work yet to do. And so it's not looking like we're going to run camp in 2021. We're following everything that's going on in the news in the province with sports teams, with schools, and the way we can't get a commitment out of the government right now. They won't meet with us. They won't meet with the Saskatchewan Camping Association. I've got camp directors and missionaries come to me and say, it was okay for 2020 to wear a tool belt and to do shingling and to do painting and to get our camp looking good, but we didn't sign up for this. We didn't go to Bible school for 4 years to do maintenance. If I'm going to do carpentry, I'll go into the private sector and earn a lot more money, and I can't blame them. And we can't get a commitment out of our government. Of course, it's election year, but right now it's not looking like we're going to run camp in 2021. So I pulled my team together. I pulled 21 people together 2 weeks ago at a camp with no cell phone service, and they go, "Oh, you bugger, you did this on purpose." And there was one little spot in the corner of the camp, and it was kind of funny to watch 5 directors be under that one little spot to try, and then they pulled down the service with all 5 of their phones, and nobody got service. But I had their undivided attention for 24 hours. We're going to do camp next year, and we're going to be creative but we're going to do ministry, okay? We're going to put 2020 to rest, and we're not going to talk about the government. We're going to work within whatever regulations and boundaries the government give us. No more negative. Put it to rest. We're going to do camp ministry. We're going to do ministry. We're going to build into the lives of young people next year. Either you're in or you're out. If you're going to quit, you're thinking of quitting, I don't blame you, and I wish you well, but you should leave today, because I need you on this team for tomorrow. And I got a full commitment, everyone renewed, right on. So got a solid team going into 2021, so feel very blessed about that. Cell phones, social media, we talked about that, the problem it's created. We've had an opportunity come along. I've had this all years, like men need to build into young boys' lives, need to be build into teens' lives, and mentoring. There's such a desire for mentoring out there, young boys. And I ran into two other men of different locations in the province this year, and we actually came together in Saskatoon. An opportunity opened up. They were praying and had the same vision, same idea, and God brought the three of us together. We have an opportunity to get a camp up on the Churchill River. It's a private camp. We can buy this camp, and God is putting things in order that we can probably get this camp. It's a fly-in camp where we can take young teenage boys in for a week, fly them in, and they'll canoe on the Churchill River for a week, and they'll live under the stars, and they'll cook their own meals, and they'll have no cell phone service, and they will be given the gospel, and they'll be taught life skills, real outdoor living, okay, and how to cook, how to fish, how to survive, and I'm not sure if we'll get it running for this summer, but definitely for summer of 2022. So if you want to be a part of something exciting, talk to me about that. There's a real opportunity, and it's a 15-minute flight from La Ronge, which doesn't sound far, but it's better than walking or canoeing. And then we put them on the river for a week. So we have that opportunity to really do that. At One Hope Canada, we have 3 core values. And the first core value is that we are desperately dependent on God. And this year we're always desperately dependent on God, but this year more than ever. Number 2 is that we're completely confident in the Bible. And number 3, we are family. So the whole One Hope Canada, missionaries across Canada, represents 240 people. We consider ourselves family. Sometimes we're a dysfunctional family, but we still consider ourselves family if you're part of the One Hope Canada team. I know our time's running out, but if you want to quickly look at 2 Chronicles Chapter 20, and if you were ever in my adult Sunday school class, you'll remember this from 2 years ago. I did go through this. I just want to share some verses from 2 Chronicles Chapter 20 about King Jehoshaphat and some of the struggles and challenges that he went through in his life and his reign. He was 35 years old when he took over as king of Judah, and he was reigning for 25 years. And he made mistakes, and he did some things to please God, but he aligned himself with other kings, which there was repercussions to his actions. Why I love this chapter so much is you'll see in my Bible, I have it highlighted and ripped apart. So again, going back in March, I thought, okay, we can't run camp, and these 88 board members and 40-some people, missionaries said, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And then I'm feeling like, man, I just feel like the story of King Jehoshaphat. I have no idea what we're going to do. And so I would read this text over and over about once a week, and I would meditate on it, and I would study it. And I found our 3 core values of One Hope Canada in this passage. And so what happens is these 3 armies are surrounding Jehoshaphat, and they're going to come and wage war on him. And in verse 3, Jehoshaphat was terrified by this news, and he begged the Lord for guidance. He also ordered everyone in Judah to begin fasting, so people from all the towns of Judah came to Jerusalem to seek the Lord's help. There is a guy who is desperately dependent on God. His army was outnumbered by 3 other armies, and he was terrified. And he asked the people to start fasting. What do we fast today? Do we ever fast anything? Back then, they didn't have a whole lot in their society, so they fasted food. And you know all about that through the biblical times. It's fasting the food. Can we fast our cell phones? Can we fast Instagram and social media for 24 hours to a week? Can we give up the news? I stopped watching the news when the riots started happening on the May long weekend. I haven't watched any American news at all. And I don't care who gets elected president. It's not, might affect my life, but I can't do anything to change it. So I just fast. I don't watch any media, any news. I feel much better. And when I fast refined sugar, I feel even better. So, but there's a guy that, on verse 3 and 4, Jehoshaphat was desperately dependent on God. Verse 5, Jehoshaphat stood before the community of Judah and Jerusalem in front of the new courtyard at the temple of the Lord. He prayed, O Lord God, our ancestors, you alone are the God who is in heaven. You are the ruler of the kingdoms of earth. You are powerful and mighty. No one can stand against you. O our God, did you not drive out those who lived in this land when your people Israel arrived? And did you not give this land forever to the descendants of your Abraham? Your people settled here and built this temple to honor them. They said, whenever we are faced with any calamity, such as war, plague, or famine, we can stand in your presence before this temple where your name is honored. We can cry out to you, and you save us, and you will hear us, and you will rescue us. To me, some say, well, you're kind of pushing it there, Terry, but when I read that, there's completely confident in the Bible. He's throwing scripture, not somebody quoting scripture, but he's putting the history of what he was given, what was available at the time, the promises that God said. And he asked God, and he reminded God of that. And then I found myself back in March and April saying these same words to God, go, well, we're not really in a war, well, somewhat of a war, a different war, but we do have plague. Just cry out to God and he'll save us and rescue us. And it didn't look how we normally would run camp, but we were able to still do ministry, and we did ministry to what do I believe was the right 1,500 kids. And then Jehoshaphat goes on in verse 10, he says, now see what the armies are doing. You would not let our ancestors invade those nations when Israel left Egypt, so they went around them and did not destroy them. Now see how they reward us, for they have come to throw us out of your land that you gave us as an inheritance. O our God, won't you stop them? We are powerless against this mighty army that is about to attack us. We do not know what to do, but we are looking for you for help. Again, he's desperately dependent on God. Many times this year, this spring and summer, we did not know what to do. So we just cried out to God and said, and God, he answered us. It goes on there, and then he appointed, kind of like a prophet in verse 15, this Levite. He's the one that's given the message to talk to the people, Jehoshaphat's people. And on the last part of verse 15, he says, this prophet or Levite says, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged by this mighty army, for the battle is not yours but God's. And we live in a culture where we very much want to take the battle to be our own, and it's God's battle. And if that is very familiar, if you want to just flip back, very familiar passage to Joshua chapter 1. And in that first passage of Joshua chapter 1, he tells us 3 times to be strong and courageous. In fact, one time he tells us to be very courageous. But in verse 5 of Joshua chapter 1 says, no one will be able to stand against you as long as you live, for I will be with you as I was with Moses. I will not fail you or abandon you. Be strong and courageous, for you are the one who will lead the people to possess all the land I swore to their ancestors I would give them. Be strong and very courageous. And I always underline that in my Bible. Be very courageous. Okay? Be careful to obey all the instructions Moses gave you. Do not deviate from them, turning either to the right or to the left. Then you will be successful in everything you do. Study the book of instruction continually. Meditate on it day and night, so you will be sure to obey everything written in it. Only then will you prosper and succeed in all you do. This is my command. Be strong and courageous. There's the 3rd time in that passage. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Very familiar passage. And that kind of lines up with what is being said in verse 15 of 2 Chronicles Chapter 20. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. And I wouldn't say I was afraid this year, but there may be a few days where I was discouraged. And, you're supposed to be this leader, right? And gripes go up, they don't go down. And so it's like you're supposed to be positive all the time with your subordinates and those you lead. So it can be challenging. In verse 17, it says, "But you will not even need to fight. Take your positions, then stand still and watch the Lord's victory. He is with you, O people of Judah and Jerusalem. Do not be afraid or discouraged. Go against them tomorrow, for the Lord is with you." Then King Jehoshaphat bowed low with his face to the ground, and all the people of Judah and Jerusalem did the same, worshiping the Lord. When's the last time that we ever bowed low to God? To literally get on our hands and knees or bow low to God and praise Him. The end of verse 20. "Believe in the Lord your God and you will be able to stand firm. Believe in the prophets and you will succeed." It goes on, just for the sake of time, I just encourage you to read through that story and read through it very slowly. If you're going through something in your own personal life, some type of battle or challenge, or something about this pandemic or with the crisis that we find ourselves in, go through this chapter 20 very slowly. Verse 25 and 26, it talks about it took 3 days. The armies, God turned those 3 armies on themselves. They killed themselves. The Israelites, or the nation of Judah, didn't even have to fight. They didn't have to enter into the battle. They killed themselves. And it took 3 days for them to pick the spoils, the plunder. Okay? When I talked earlier about the finances of our camps, we're unable to bring in all that registration money to keep the power. We thought would pay the bills. We're unable to do banquets. Okay? Somehow, God turned a tide that we weren't able to do all these things, and all 9 of our camps in the province ended up in a good financial position. Doesn't mean they're rocking with tons of money, don't get me wrong, but we thought we were projecting to lose money and to have a bad profit loss sheet. And I talk about my experiences of the church and the camp. It wasn't about me, because I look at all these 9 balance sheets of these 9 different camps, and I'm thinking, wow, only God could have done that. Only God did that in the times that we live. That's a great story. And then I always end it there for myself at the end of verse 29. But if you read further to the end of the chapter, when things started going good with Jehoshaphat, he kind of aligned himself with a wicked king. And then there's repercussions to that. And then it talks about how that's where the chapter ends. And so God at One Hope Canada, not just in Saskatchewan, but across Canada, has brought us through a year of challenge and somewhat difficulty, but He's also given us great blessing. We are allowed to do great ministry on a smaller scale. And so now we have to also follow that very end of the chapter and not align ourselves with anything stupid or do anything arrogant or dumb or get, hey, I did this, or we did this, God did this, or else there will be repercussions to our actions. I just want to close with this one small final verse. And I didn't find this. One of the guys I work with, he found it. It's in Zechariah chapter 4, verse 10. And I go, how did you find that verse? And he goes, well, really, I never would have been reading Zechariah ever, but I'm reading this Bible plan, and it was part of my daily reading, so I found it. I don't know if that ever happens to you. Zechariah chapter 4, verse 10. There's a whole study here, but it says, "Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin." And it says, to see the plumb line in Zerubbabel's, somebody's hand. This was after the captivity. When they were come back, there was the original big temple, massive temple that was built. They rebuilt a new temple, but it was a very small scale, nothing like the original. And there's a whole study and a whole story going on here. But when the people came, they looked at this new temple and thought, it's not really kind of like, I can just see like on our own culture today in North America, it's not the big shiny temple we used to have, it's this small little dive, right? It is kind of paraphrasing the story for the sake of time. And when we looked at that verse and we looked at how camp was, we went from 6,500 to 1,500 campers. And we didn't run this big grande scale camp that we know it, very small, empty camps, whether it was through virtual means, however. But then we look at this verse, do not despise despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. So it was a much smaller scale, but we know that God was honored and glorified in what did take place. And so we look forward to whatever is thrown at us in 2021, and we're going to meet the challenge head on with the Lord's help, and we're going to do ministry, some type of ministry. We don't know how or what, but we'll just trust God for it.